Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum 36. Unabhängigen Filmfest Osnabrück. Ich bin heute hier mit Robin Petré zu Gast. Sie ist die Filmemacherin von From the Wild Sea, den Sie gerade gesehen haben, und der Film läuft im Wettbewerb um den Friedensfilmpreis Osnabrück. Dear Robin, thank you very much for taking your time to talk to us about your movie, and congratulations to the nominations to the Peace Film Award in Osnabrück. It's nice that you're here, and I will explain a little bit about. We will talk a little bit about your movie. Thank you for that. I will start with a larger question, and then we will try to get a little bit into details later. But can you tell us a little bit about what made you do this project? What was the motivation behind it in the beginning?
Right. Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm really happy to be able to do this Q&A. So actually, this film project started with my curiosity on something called cross-species empathy. So that would be when, basically when you feel empathy towards someone who is not from your own species. So as a human, it's not like I only want to help human beings, but also animals. And you also see it in the animal world, actually, other species helping another kind of animal, or even dolphins trying to help humans that have fallen into the water and are about to drown. Mm-hmm. So I thought this was really interesting. Like what is the motivator, sort of what is happening in this kind of situation? And I was talking to many people. I was also in Germany talking to a scientist who believes we can actually talk with animals. And so I was like on many detours, and in the end I ended up on the shoreline of England, Ireland and Holland, where I found this rescue network that are working so hard to try to save these marine wildlife, as you see in the film. Mm-hmm. And sort of gradually the film began to take another direction that was more about how humans collectively impact the sea, like the pollution and the climate change and all these problems that we're causing for these animals. But it started with cross-species empathy, and it ended there on the shore.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because if you watch this movie and this documentary, there is a lot of distance and a little bit of coldness in it. That was my feeling watching it. And so it's interesting that you focused, the starting point was this empathy. And I think you have a very interesting viewpoint on this, and it makes a lot of sense. But the colors and the feeling of the film is quite cold. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
Of course. Yeah, it is really cold. It is a really cold universe. And first of all, this is like a world that is so rough. And this is the winter storm season in the UK, the British Isles. And it was really important for me to really portray this world as it is. It is so rough, it is so cold, the weather is terrible, the weather is almost like an enemy, you know. It's mm-hmm. It's nature, but it's also kind of spinning out of control a bit. Mm-hmm. The storms have gotten so much worse, more frequent. So this work that the volunteers are engaging themselves in, it is so rough. And I feel that most often when you see, for instance, like a seal rescue, it's not something that has never been filmed before, right? But normally you see it almost like in a Disneyfication kind of way, that the animals are so cute. Maybe there's funny music and, you know, or a voiceover explaining everything that's happening. And I wanted to veer away from that and be more truthful. Mm-hmm. And also, I know that there's a distance. This was something we were talking a lot about, me and my team, how to actually create a space for the animal perspective. That was so important for me, this animal perspective, to have it be part of the film. And how do we make space for that? And yeah, there is a sense of distance, but I also feel like there is a sense of closeness and intimacy. Mm-hmm. So the film is like working with this notion of distance quite a lot, and when to step close and when to step back. But I think sometimes in the distance, it's also like it's a method of trying to give space for the animals to exist in the film. So, for example, instead of editing onto one detail and then another detail, which is very directed, like I would be as a director directing your attention to notice certain details. Instead, I'm taking a huge step back. There's a fixed camera on a tripod, and you just allow the animal or the person, the human being, to do what they're doing inside of this frame, unmanipulated. Of course, there is a manipulation because there is a camera present. But we're also playing on that in the film and seeing how animals also react to the camera, which is also a human construction. And yeah, now I'm making it very long, but yeah, it's really interesting, this idea of the distance in the film. I think there's a lot to talk about.
I liked it very much. Also, there is you play a lot with juxtapositions and comparisons, and I like that a lot about your movie, because the people in your film are a little bit odd. If you look at people, especially people outside, if you portray people outside in the landscape, in nature, they're all a little bit acting like they don't belong there. They're all a little bit. You have this feel of, I don't know. I wrote some stuff down. They're a little bit strange, like a little bit awkward, clumsy in some ways. And then you portray the animals often not in their natural habitat. You portray them in closed rooms, in rooms for people. Actually, you don't often see a seal in a bathtub, for example. And
right.
So your comparisons and juxtapositions between these two worlds, and how they cross over and how they don't actually belong to each other, but have a lot of connections. Yeah, would you talk a little bit about your idea behind it?
Of course. I mean, you're saying so many interesting things. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hold on to all the thoughts I just had while you were talking, but I mean, I don't think that the people in the film are weird at all. I think for me, they represent all of us, like humankind, actually. And I think that they are in their awkwardness, sometimes maybe in their clumsiness, they are so human, right? They are just doing the best they can. Not all of them are professionals. There's just a few professional biologists that are leading these networks, but they are just you and me. They are just volunteers coming to the rescue when it happens, when there's an accident or an emergency, and they're just doing the best they can. And that's probably the awkwardness you feel. And I hope that the film also has like some charm, and that people can laugh sometimes and loosen up and just feel that we're trying our best. But at the same time, we collectively as a species, humankind, is creating an enemy that's maybe too big for us. If the weather gets totally out of control, we become almost ant-like. Like when you see us confronting this whale, what can we really do? We're so small. But at the same time, we have caused this whale to strand, like indirectly, by changing the weather. So yeah, I wanted to just show it as it is, and not just have clips where everybody is so professionally professional acting, but
it makes absolute sense.
And the other thing is, I mean, you're saying that we're coexisting, and maybe we don't belong in the same, we're not even part of the same world. I mean, to an extent I agree, but at the same time, our worlds do overlap. Like when the whale strands, when a dolphin strands, it actually washes into our world. And suddenly when it's on the beach, it's misplaced, it's dislocated, it's suddenly in a place where it doesn't belong. A dolphin on land, it's becoming a part of our world. And the whole film also looks at what happens in this encounter. What happens when an animal like this just sort of dumps into our world, and what do we do about it? Do we just leave it there to die? And then again, we have this empathy, this feeling that, oh my God, we have to do something. And that's when they get picked up on the beach and brought to an animal hospital, these small rooms, these enclosures. And I think it's so interesting when you see how the different animals, where there are different personalities. It's not like a seal is a seal is a seal, and you take a seal and you put it in an animal hospital and it acts the same every time. Actually, the different seals have totally different reactions to the human world. And some of them are really curious and playful. So when you enter one kennel, one enclosure with a seal, that particular seal might come up to you and push your feet and nudge you and is really curious about what is a human. And another seal, the next one, might be actually aggressive. Maybe it's afraid. It doesn't want to have anything to do with you as a human. So they have totally different reactions. I could mention 20 more different reactions that the seals that I met have had. and I think this is so interesting. But also, now what you're saying, it's almost as if the film also becomes about not just what happens when an animal is put into a human world, but also vice versa, right?
Yes. And also I liked your work with your camera, because there was no moving of the camera in the whole movie, right? In the whole documentary, you just let the nature and the people moving in the frame. So can you tell us a little bit about your decisions to do it like this?
Yes, of course. First of all, I just wanted to say that it's also really interesting that you're mentioning this confusion in the beginning of the film as you're watching. This is very intentional because, again, when you take a wild animal and you put it into the human world, into the human construction, there is a total confusion. And again, the animal perspective was so important to me to leave space for that in the film. And so I wanted to take that opportunity in the film's beginning, before you know what this film is even about. Maybe you get to feel maybe a little bit, a hint of this misplacement, this almost surreal look at the human surroundings, what is going on. The animal in this case doesn't even know if they're going to help him or hurt him or what is happening at all. And then, of course, they are intelligent animals. They figure it out. They calm down. But when they first land in the center, in the animal hospital, there is this sense of confusion, which I thought was beautiful in a way, because it's a confusion actually about what is a human, what is the human world, and what are we doing as a human species. And I thought it was an opportunity to look at that with this kind of view.
Yeah.
And again, this also taps into the decision to have this relentlessly unmoving camera that just stays there in a fixed frame rather than following its subjects. Again, it became almost like a dogma in this film. We wanted to have this kind of as little manipulation as possible, again in the editing, again in the camera work, that you just see what is, so we're working with long takes and unmoving camera to avoid having this feeling of a subjective camera, again of a human interaction, a human being there, being present, deciding to follow some detail, but instead just to have the scene totally fixed like this, which creates also, it's almost a strange effect, because it becomes this series almost of tableaus that build the whole film. But it's the main purpose was to strengthen this idea, this feeling of the animal perspective, to leave room for this in the film.
Makes sense. It's beautiful, because after you get over this irritation at the beginning, you can play with it and you can involve in it. So you can be part of it without disturbing something. That's quite an interesting experience as you watch. So I would like to know, can you explain to the audience what it means to make such a film like yours? How many hours of preparation, how many research is going into it? Is going into the shooting of this project? And how did you and maybe your Charlotte Bankston, right? Your editor. How do you work with each other after you collected your material?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a big process. It's probably no surprise, but it takes years, of course, to make a project like this. The biggest challenge was in the beginning, and had to do with access to once I was kind of getting on the track of what I wanted to film and what kind of situations I wanted to film, really, and with whom. I had to sort of get access to this. It's not easy because, first of all, these situations are so intense. It's really about life and death of the individual animals. So you cannot necessarily just enter with a big crew and ask them to stop. Can you repeat this motion for the camera? You know, it's the opposite. We had to work just with a 2-people crew, me and a camera person, because this is the maximum amount of people that you can actually enter into this kind of rescue and rehabilitation facilities, if you get to enter at all. So access was a big thing, and that took a while. And from I first started getting the idea, it took 2 years until we filmed the first footage, which was the swans. The swan material was the first rescue operation that we filmed. Most of the footage was filmed in the winter of 2019-2020. But
the masks, you see the masks in some pictures.
But this is not because of the pandemic. 95% of the film or so, just one scene actually was shot during the pandemic. Everything else has nothing to do with the pandemic.
Okay.
But what is so interesting is that you see people are already wearing these plastic suits and the masks and the gloves. The gloves is a thing, right?
Absolutely.
And this is something we're used to now because of the world situation, the pandemic. But they are already, before the pandemic, dealing with wildlife and with oil and pollution, but also with wildlife. And you have to really be protected. And also we can also transmit these diseases. This is a thing that people have been, of course, people that are working with wild animals, they knew about this way before the pandemic hit. So it's almost, I feel like there's almost a premonition somewhere in the film as well.
Yeah.
So still we had a few, most was shot this winter. Then there was a few scenes shot at other times. And during the editing, we actually wanted to, or I wanted to start and end on the beach with the seals. And we ended up doing that actually, but we tried many different endings on the film and different ways of storytelling. But what we wanted to also achieve in the editing, me and Charlotte Munk, was this feeling of continuous surprise, of the moment, of the image, the location, the what is happening, who is doing what, you know, this feeling of curiosity, to maintain that during the film. And also at times a feeling of suspense, of course, and how to create this, because it's not your usual narrative. You're not following one protagonist on a hero's journey. It's the opposite. It's more fragmented, sporadic.
But it allows you a better, brighter glimpse into this world, how it's actually how it actually works, and how the people are working in this kind of organizations, like you portrayed. And so I would love to know, how did you get involved, especially with this 3 organizations? I think you worked with 3 at the end. I don't know how many you started or tried to connect, but that's quite interesting why you decided on this 3 you worked with.
Well, it actually has to do with the animal species as well. It was important for me not just to make the film, for instance, about seals alone, because I felt that the film would be stronger if you show how wide these issues are, and how wide these networks are, and how many people are actually, or there's so many people involved, right? So many animals as well. And so there was a seal center. They ended up in the film, they're dealing just with seals. There was a temporary rescue, a huge rescue operation, bringing in people from the United States, Brazil, all over Europe, to try to save these hundreds of swans. And then finally Dan Jarvis, the biologist, who's saving he's actually working with seals, dolphins, whales, different animals. So dolphins and whale in the film. Yeah, but it was because I wanted to show something wider and give this wider perspective. And also, if the film is driven by this sense of curiosity and surprise, and surprise is not the right word, but I have a Danish word in my mind, but it's more like when you are pondering something, you know, like you don't know exactly what's going on, but you're really curious about it. You want to know more. This kind of feeling. I just felt like the film would work better with these different organizations, different animals.
Yeah, that's quite interesting and impressive, because if you think, if you have never thought about this stuff or didn't get to know an organization like that, I think you have a very different imagination about their work. Yeah, that was very interesting for me. And I think I can ask you a lot of questions, but we have to stop at one point. I would love to thank you for your time and for this beautiful made documentary. And I'm very glad we can show it here in Osnabrück. And I wish you good luck for the future of this documentary and for future projects, and for maybe I will, in German you say, ich drücke die Daumen, I vote for you for the Peace Film Award.
Thank you so much. It's been really, thank you. It's been really, really nice to have an opportunity to also share my thoughts with all of you, with you and with everyone else who might be watching.
Thank you very much for your time and this interesting talk, and good luck for everything. And maybe we will see us or talk about your next film in the future. I would love
that. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.